Welcome to 10.8. 10.8 is a more personal and journal-style series of articles by myself that will center around police management, criminology, and policing. The articles will not be the typical citation-driven essay style that I use. For those articles, please see my Medium page, published books such as Amazon, especially The Business of Policing, Volume 1, Crimes and Punishments in the 21st Century, or scientific published literature highlighted by The Business of Policing, Volume 2, Managing Ethical Police Conduct. Here I will post frequent thought streams on my personal philosophies. Thanks for listening in. Police reforms. Police unions. Does anyone else find it very strange that the only time liberals are against unions and employee rights and the conservatives are for unions and employee rights is when it comes to the police? Of course, I take the position that, indeed, the police are different. They are doing a job under unique circumstances. So let's take this as evidence that everyone agrees that I am correct and policing is entirely unique and needs to be approached in that way. Police unions are basically like any other unions. They argue for employee benefits, wages, and job security. They stand as a check and balance for the human beings who choose to take on this challenging job. And strong unions are a contributing factor to why people are willing to do this crazy job of policing. I hear activists frequently claiming that unions are a barrier to police reform because of these typical union operations. Yet every time I ask them to cite an example, typical talking points are recited. Things like the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, waiting periods for testimony, and protection of employment. But none of these things are barriers. I mean, come on, seriously, does this sound like something terrible? Humorous side note, you may have heard me mention it before. People do not even Google the things they claim to be interested in. I just used Google and Bing to search for arguments against police unions and found very few items. Mainly the results are about public sector unions in general and make more of a philosophical objection. So then I decided to check that search term on Google Trends, and the result was not enough data, which basically means a big fat zero. I and any of you that search that term as well will be a part of a very small group of people searching for such things. So then I searched my name and I got hundreds of responses. Now, the final one, as I have jokingly stated, is Joe Rogan gay. And man, that had about the same as me. I thought it would be much higher. Oh well, womp. Then I checked the term police reform, and it had way less than my name did. Look at these things for yourself. Go to Google Trends and see. This is why I act so confidently that no one else knows this police management subject as I do. I know there are only a handful of people at best that are even researching this stuff. We all seem to have accepted the philosophical basis behind police practices. There's not much going on in a discussion over improving the foundations of criminal justice thought. The odds that I will step on the toes of one of those 4 or 5 people seems very unlikely. I hope. And if you care about people's rights, you should be arguing something that I would agree with. This is that the police and their unions are making compelling arguments for these benefits, such as waiting periods to be questioned and access to adequate legal counsel. There is strong scientific data that those who have gone through stressful and traumatic experiences are not in a sober state of mind. Unfortunately, human recollection is a terrible witness anyway. Anything you get from eyewitnesses is very suspect. Most of my consulting has been about implementing the civilian-led policing model. But for any police reform measure, the line that the union is some barrier is silly. I am very comfortable taking over an agency with the strongest union and still quickly implementing dramatic reform. Just remember what this union is: a collective bargaining unit. You can achieve anything you want through increased wages and benefits for the current group of officers. If you want the police to go along with decriminalization, offer half of them the proceeds and wages. They will approve the new contract, I assure you. I was there in Baltimore when the rules changed significantly for new hires. The vets got a 20-year retirement, and the new guys had to serve for 25 years. It was complicated, but that was the end result. That is just human nature. Additionally, my experience has been that unions are much more interested in reform than the politicians are. The Baltimore FOP indeed proposed many reforms that would have been practical measures of police reform that the city refused to consider. Then that union gets protested despite having tried to make advancements on the subject. This is similar to protesters harassing Senator Ryan over no-knock raids when he has been trying to stop them. Many police reform ideas seem like they were planted in people's minds by tricking them into distractions, so effective reform never occurs. Reform is about a power shift. This shift is outside of the union. The only real reform can come from shifting police control from politicians' interest to vested community members' interest. Unions are not a barrier to police reform. If you have some evidence that they are, let me know. Make the case. What is the point of your police reform idea? It is not necessarily your fault. It has been what humans have been thinking was right for a very long time. Most people are defining justice and police reform as some level of revenge or vengeance. The unscientific and untrue principle is that force or the threat of force is an effective deterrent to disagreed with conduct. If you credibly promise to harm someone, then they won't harm you. I hope most of you can see the obvious flaws with such thinking. I mean, it is only reasonable for me to harm you if your idea of how you should treat me is essentially the beatings will continue until morale improves. It is a vicious cycle of treating others as you would not want to be treated yourself. How does your police reform idea result in better future outcomes? And let me be very blunt. One thing I often bite my tongue about is, what the hell have you done that warrants you having an opinion about such a complex topic? Where are you getting this from? The source of information is not everything, but it is critical to serious thought. Most likely, the ideas that we have in our heads about police reform came from some measure of media. A journalist, an op-ed, the politicians of the FOP, government, special interest groups, and more. I do not mean it as an insult, though it is. Nearly no one has ever come to me with questions that started with any scholarly work or from any of the experienced experts in the field. They are never like, I was reading Tracy Mears' work on rightful policing. What do you think about that idea, Dr. Wood? I have not met a single activist or anyone who even knew who Tracy Mears is. Now, I would argue against Mears, not that her research is bad. I just think I can easily demonstrate the flaws. Regardless, she is another scholarly leader in police thought. In the end, we are talking about the management of human employees. That is why my scholarly studies shifted to organizational management. I found out that there is well understood social science. We know a good deal about how to get the best products from our organizations. The more you can align the desires of your stakeholders to your product, the higher customer satisfaction and loyalty you will have. You control behavior through incentives and disincentives that work mostly in the background. You can look at any one of my you can look at one of my proposals, civilian-led policing, to get an idea of how this can work in practice. I have no idea how many other ideas are possible. I just need proposals that are intended to be taken seriously to meet the basic evidence that supports why the idea would work. Often this is not possible in data, and I understand. In those cases, we need concrete proposals with rational thought lines that you take the time to spell out in written form and include responses to potential critiques. Take the ideas seriously as you expect others to. Remember that. Take the ideas seriously as you expect others to.